I suppose we're here because, we decided on the topics of morality and health. Um,
My favorite things.
yeah, so I guess I'd start with like, what's the inspiration there? What are the, what would you like to talk about regarding? Do you want to talk about them individually, separately, together? Any specific areas? Um,
Hmm. Well, health and morality, which are both tied together, but usefully distinct from each other in certain cases, uh, seems to me to be the most important thing that us humans, who are rational while also pleasure-seeking beings, to try and attain to the best of our ability. Um, as I mentioned, I guess health and morality are very overlapping. I like to use so morality for me, which many things in regards to morality I seem to be alone on in some cases, if not entirely different. But morality only means anything if there are at least two people, two parties. If it's just you, morality isn't really a thing. I mean, you can think of moral scenarios in your head and whatnot by yourself, but morals is a human to human or being to being type of activity. Now, health, however, can be had individually as well as together with other people. So that's where these overlapping things will differ from each other. Your health can be had independent of morality. Um, I'll stop there. I'm sure that'll get the ball rolling in some way, but um, so
so,
yeah,
mm,
yeah. Go ahead,
no,
please.
I was just gonna try and run with that. So health, I guess you're saying, is intrinsically tied with morality, but they are independent. You can have your health without morality as well. Um, to
Correct.
Yeah, to me that goes into like what is morality. We'd have to start defining what morality is at that point for me. Are
Sure.
we deriving natural phenomenon as morality in that sense? Like if whatever is, say, evidentiarily the best to produce the best results for human health, is that what we
Yeah, the most
guide?
health.
Yeah, is that what we guide
Right.
morality off of? Is that something you're saying is intrinsic, or is it yeah, let's go off of that a little bit.
Yeah. So let's define morality and let's define health a little bit. Um, Morality for me is along with the tenet of it includes at least two parties is the usually I would have like an etymological. I'm pretty conservative and traditional when it comes to etymology. Not always, but I'm sure there's some etymological root of what morals would mean or whatever that translates to from Greek. But the good life, um, eudaimonia, as Aristotle called it, uh, seeking the good life through virtues. I'm not necessarily a virtue ethicist, but I'm just giving an example. Something that would be preferable. And so this is how I normatively use it. Descriptively, it may be different, morality. Descriptively, morality may be a fiction, right? It may be illusory, but how I'm using it is intersubjectively. Again, you need at least two parties, and whatever the preferred, agreed um, idea or mode of action with the idea of health in mind, with the purpose of health, that would be morality or how morals should be. So I'm giving and so for health, real quick, um, I'm going to use most of the things that I know from science. Science seems to be the best heuristic that us humans have come up with. Um, Modern science in our current paradigm and revolution is relatively new, maybe a century or so old. Of course, we can go all the way back to the pre-Socratics, 2,500, 3,000 years ago, which there's some wisdom of health to be had from there, but mainly from a 21st century perspective, so social health, as in sociology or the psychological sciences or soft sciences, which of course ties into mental health with psychology and neuroscience and neurobiology, and physical health. We'll take a physiological, anatomical, and biological. So science, given that it's our best heuristic so far, we will, in our goals of morality, which ought be health, intersubjectively between however many subjects, will be had to optimize health given those scientific-based, evidence-based type things. As you were saying, we kind of have we use the evidence, and we kind of go from there to abide to our health as best as possible. So.
So Casey has a comment down here. Would a fair steelman be we can act on some values to obtain our own health? Assuming community would also be necessary for health in humans, which then requires valuing moral actions between the members of said community. Does any of that resonate with you?
We can act on some values to attain health on our own. Yeah. That seems to be more or less a good steelman. I would only caution that sometimes people have values that they think are attributing to their health, but it's not. And so, again, assuming that in your steelman, Casey, all of these people are kind of abiding to a sound epistemic process and understanding of what health is, then yeah, that works. But of course, you have the heroin addict who maybe is really good for his temporary mental health. It gives some, seemingly infinite euphoria in a finite amount of time. But of course, that's not going to be optimal for his health, given, whatever science says about it biologically and how addiction affects the body and the brain and so on.
Yeah. I mean, I lean towards evidence and the sciences and what statistics and statistical analysis and all those things tell us. There are things in life that go well past that. So, health is important. I guess, do you also take a harm reduction approach there? Is that something that you leave in your calculus? Whereas, like, all right, just a ridiculous example might be, we know we have evidentiarily some cultures that are heavily religious, and when you tear out their religious foundations, it can be bad for them in their mental health state and maybe for their surrounding community and such, because they're going to start acting maybe abhorrently or differently. So what do you feel? What do you feel about that, and what it says from a morality and a health standpoint? Those areas where they're nebulous,
It's so funny because this what seems to be this exact topic, I haven't really talked much about in the past, but like I've talked about it a handful of times in the past week, and I am of the opinion that religion is extremely useful and extremely conducive to well-being and health. I haven't mentioned the word well-being yet today, because health is more, you can look at kind of a physical object and the evidence more so than you can see well-being. Well-being is more so a conceptual and a philosophical thing, but they're more or less synonymous. So religion in many cultures and subcultures, just little communities, are clearly beneficial to well-being and mental and social health. Sure, it could probably be, I mean, I see a lot of like gym goers who post on TikTok and they say, through the strength of God, can I do this exercise? And it's like, if they actually believe that, I have no doubt that their body is probably producing some hormones, some adrenaline based on this kind of like pious feeling that they have. So now, and so I'm all for that. I'm all for that utility and that the bringing of well-being that comes from that. However, this doesn't mean that, oh, studies show that communities do better when they're more religious. We're just assuming the stat is true. Perhaps there's counter evidence, but I do believe that it is true. And so given this, though, you can't say now, oh, Mr. Atheist, if you care so much about well-being and health, why don't you believe in God? The answer to this is you don't choose your beliefs. So, so my moral quest would be, whenever I come across a theist, either in the server or in real life, unless they are like inquiring about it to me, about the truth aspect of whether or not God is real or the things that religion says is true, unless they bring it up to me, I usually won't hearken on them, because I know that there's that utility of that useful fiction, what I think is a fiction, and it would therefore be immoral for me to, just for the sake of it, me wanting to prove them wrong, it would be immoral for me to like hearken on them and really press on them, especially if they say, you know, like, man, like, I don't really think about it too much. I just kind of, I like it, and I'm like, oh, well, you know, you shouldn't believe that, you know, you're wrong. I wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Usually, but it depends. If they're inquisitive, I'm going to give them the inquisitive response, and I'm going to requite them. But yeah, it is useful, and it's conducive to well-being. Religion is.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think if they're open for conversation about their foundational topics, that's not necessarily harmful in and of itself.
Correct.
I don't know if we should impose those things upon people if they're not, you know, open to those discussions. Just like I don't think we should have religion imposed on us if, you know, we don't subscribe to it. Or
that's a good point.
Yeah. So, you know, around those lines, that I don't know. Is there pragmatism in there? Because I guess there has to be, right? And
absolutely.
How far does your pragmatism go? Is it, you know, I have a lot of lofty hopes and goals for humanity, and I often hear these conversations of well-being, and well-being creates health, and you know that's kind of the moral whatever schema, if you will. You know, one might label these things like virtue ethics or something, you know, some other things like this. I ward myself from those kind of thoughts and behaviors. I think those are slippery slopes for people. I think, anyways, I don't want to divert the topic, but where does your pragmatism come in? You know, how much do you prescribe for people? Because we know we have to make some prescriptions. You know?
So a common question that I ask people, and feel free to answer yourself if you'd like, but a common question that I ask is, assuming these things are true dichotomies, of course, in the hypothetical, we're just trying to figure out our values here, maybe to go to Casey's earlier comment on values. I'll ask, what would you rather have? And so I'll lay out a story. A society that their epistemic endeavors are flawed and unsound, like there's an alternative that would likely be better, but their health and their well-being was necessarily better from whatever useful fictions that they're applying? Or would you rather have a society that is purely scientific, knows all of the facts, but they have no idea how to treat each other? So the question is, would you rather have the good fiction or the bad truth? And well, I'll answer my question. Usually I will not influence my interlocutor's opinion, but I'm also not going to put you on the spot as I'm the guest here. What I believe is that the good fiction is more valuable to prioritize pragmatically than the bad truth. So that's where my pragmatism lies. I think I think that maybe elucidates whatever you're trying to seek with that question. Yeah, I mean, well-being and health is more important than truth, in my opinion. Now, of course, these things go hand in hand. It's ideal that we use truthful, descriptive facts to attain well-being, but just figuring out, when we have to tell our kids the useful fiction, and we're laying out those moments in reality where they don't overlap, and you have to choose either to tell them the truth or to abide to what will conduce to well-being. I usually choose the latter, which is well-being.
Yeah. I mean, I resonate with all of that. I often make the same comparison by saying, are you evidentiary or are you feels?
Vibes based.
Yeah, are you vibes based? Exactly. And wherever you lie on that spectrum is what kind of identifies you in the sea of people. I tend to rely more on evidence. I tend to be more on the scientific side as much as possible. So I'm definitely much less feels, but then also the pragmatism in me says that I have to be wary of people who are not like me. Not wary, but include them in the sum total of things, if you will. Because that, if that scale drops off quickly, whether you're evidentiary and then whether something you have a strong feeling over, it doesn't necessarily have to be that magical. It could be something as simple as like vaccines. I support the use of vaccines up until those damn COVID vaccines.
Yeah.
There's always constant fluctuating scales there. So yeah, I agree about the where the rubber meets the road. I have my ideals. My ideals would be a very evidentiary based society and strongly driven by that. I think we need more science and philosophy in government and less individuality and freedoms, in a sense. More collective nature, if you will, but that's communist of me, so don't get me started.
Well, yeah, no, I'm
Anyways, well, I wanted to
communist.
say just beyond that, I want to hear you talk, not me. So I diverted
Yeah,
there.
no,
Yeah.
no, I, and it's worth bringing up to your point. Clearly, evidence and whatnot and the whole lot. So there's a couple things that I want to say, but I'll say this first. It sometimes is worth bringing up to like the heroin addict, right? Who believes that his well-being is being achieved, but you need to give him some facts. The anti-COVID vaxxer, the conservative who does things because an ancient book tells them to do it. So there are times where I would deploy the truth. Again, though, it's because me and this person now have a difference of what well-being is and how we get there. And so I'm not necessarily, I'm using truth, but I'm battling my well-being, my idea of well-being and the good life against their idea, in which, yeah, of course, we'll bring up the evidence, we'll take from our best heuristic that we have as humans, which is science. So yeah, we want more evidence, we want more philosophy, like you were saying, no doubt. There's a low, how do I say this? There's a high supply but a low demand of philosophy, I'd say. And so, but and then what was I going to say? A second point. With evidence and explanation. This is truly a tangent, but Another good value question is, what do you value more, the explanation when it comes to truth seeking or the evidence? This is a thing that I've noticed with not only God, but the hard problem of consciousness. People have a lot of good explanations for how consciousness works, i.e. idealism. They say, oh, well, everything is consciousness. Boom, explained. There's no gap, it's solved. The evidence doesn't show that. It doesn't show us that a brick is conscious or a rock is conscious, or that the earth would cease to exist if all rational and conscious beings existed in it. So just another value question or point with evidence versus explanation. Huge tangent. Don't need to go on that. It seems as though you two would agree that evidence seems to be more valuable than the could-be explanation that we can create.
Right, but that's the paradox. That's the paradox that we hit of now I'm in the place of evidence, but now what's I always say the weight of evidence to you. Like if the Bible is heavy evidence that God exists for you, then you and I don't have the same calculus of the weight of evidence and what it means to be valid. You know, I guess, what qualified evidence would be in that sense.
Right. What's your epistemology? What's your standard?
Yes. Evidentiary standard. Exactly. Standard of evidence. So I agree completely. Well, I agree that it ultimately is sad that it's really sad that it does end up being subjective for many people. Orders of subjective, you know.
Vibes-based thinking is very dangerous. Emotions, as well as rationality, have formed biologically in a way as to help us survive over hundreds and thousands and millions of years. Yeah. So.
Yeah, it is.
We have to be careful with that.
Yeah, it's sad, but it's also, we know it's a part of us. Like there's no separating us from our emotions to our actions. And then, you know, the way I see it personally is, you know, it's neurodevelopmental. If you have a good environment for good neurogenesis and neurodevelopment, you tend to be rational and have inhibitory behaviors and not act on your impulses, not get overly aggressive or angry. Whereas if you live in an environment that is not subject to those things, like you know, toxins, abuse, whatever it is, there are notorious biological features that we've identified today of these various circumstances in life that make our brains just not function the same. And we're stuck there. We're kind of stuck somewhere in the midst there of old brains and generational abuse from history, just preventing so many people from advancing to a state of a more collective civil association, if you will. I don't know. Anyways, I went off there now. Where do we want to...
Can you imagine being a kid growing up and you just have constantly cortisol running through your body and what is it, norepinephrine or whatever the fight or flight thing is that, I mean, of course that's going to stunt your cognitive faculties in abstracting and math, logic, forming emotions, even forming relationships. I mean, so no, I totally get that. I don't know what the stat is. I hear a lot of different things like, oh, it's 20% nature, 80% nurture. Oh, it's 50-50. I do think that ultimately, I mean, nurture is the only thing that we can control. We don't need to get into free will, but of course, it seems like we have the ability to control our choices so, you know, we have the control over nurture if we have control over anything. And so that's an important, even if it's only 20%, even if it's only 5% or 3%, I think that if it's the only thing we can control, we should do our best to make sure we develop kids neuronally, properly, physically, mentally, and emotionally.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, whether we view it from a free will standpoint or not, I think we make decisions, and those decisions,
right.
with the best information, with the best cognitive development, you end up generally in the right places. So,
Yep. What do you got next?
no, a lot actually. Well, a million things, but I'm
Good.
also fighting flighty brain at the moment. Don, are you there? Do you in the background? Do you have any questions? Do you have anything you want to say? So, Don and I get together and we talk about things and we solve problems all the time. We solve the world's problems. Problem is we're old and forgetful, so we generally forget by the end of that session, and then we start over the next day. Um, yeah, he's
Yeah,
cooking at the moment.
we have the same conversation over and over again.
It's like Groundhog Day, you know.
Yeah.
Um, but
Or what was that? What was that Adam Sandler chick flick where the chick forgets like every day? Or maybe What am I thinking of?
was
Oh
this
no, that's the
Click?
Notebook.
Oh, okay. The
Also the
Notebook.
Notebook. Or right? Isn't that with Ryan Gosling? I don't know. I need to catch up on my chick flicks
Yeah,
maybe,
right,
but
right, right. The repetitive nature of things. Yeah. Um,
right, the memory. Yeah.
so, well, we were talking about morality and health, right? So, we went down a bunch of different tangents about, um, you know, I guess you rely on your epistemic standards to kind of set your base to build the structures that tell you what is kind of moral and immoral based on what you feel is, healthy for you, and you recognize that other people have their own interest and guides that make different healthy pressures and precipitations in their lives. Um, so I guess
Yeah.
the problem being though, man, here's my big issue is that I don't think most people understand what it means to have epistemic standards.
Right.
How
Yeah.
that's
Uh,
part of the problem, and for me at least. And it's funny, I've come to a recent saying, and I have a perspective, and maybe we can go down this hole at some point in time, or this rabbit hole if you want to. But my saying is generally like, I'm going to die and it doesn't matter anyway. So, but it's fun to talk about, right? Um,
yeah. Yeah. If not for any greater purpose that exists from you or independent of you, depending if you're theistic or not. At least it's for the pleasure of doing so. At
mm.
least while we're living in this life, we're attaining that pleasure or ataraxia and or eudaimonia through philosophical conversation. Um, yeah, and it's fun to cope as well and tell myself, oh, this will have an effect on future people, in the future, and it will lead to, a greater. So, I tell myself, who knows? Maybe it will, maybe it won't, but regardless, I'm going to do it for the pleasure of doing so, if for nothing else. Um,
Yes.
so, um, epistemology is a big old word that people, I think, get frightened by. I was not turned off to it just because I was oddly and autistically inquisitive and curious of philosophy. This was during COVID when I had nothing else to do, so who knows, maybe I wouldn't be a philosopher if COVID didn't hit. But people like Aaron, our buddy Aaron, or our friend Ink was telling me, listen, man, I listen to you and Thomas talk all the time, but you guys use all these words and this technical jargon, and it's like hard to follow sometimes. And I'm like, dude, I totally get it. If I can tell you one thing to learn about philosophy, it would be epistemology. What's epistemology? It's a big old word for how do you know what you know? What is your standards of knowing? Do you take a scientific perspective? Do you take an empirical, a rational, a biblical, a faith-based? So, there's a lot of different things. I like to cross-verify the things that I learn. I like it to be pure. I like it to be falsified, like it needs to be able to be falsified. So everyone's standards are going to be different, but it's something that you should be able to intelligibly talk about when someone asks you about it. And yeah, you're right. Not many people can do that. There's a huge lack of supply when it comes to epistemology. Well, there's a huge supply of it, but a low demand. That's what I mean. You get my metaphor. So yeah, sometimes I'll just say standards of knowing, standards of knowledge, because it's less of a big and scary word.
And I know you're a big fan of the ancient philosophers. I think
Artistically.
What's that? What did you say?
Sorry,
Again?
say again.
No, I said, what did you say? Autistically.
Autistically, love with very, very much so. Yeah.
So I think I've heard you say you kind of plant your flag right around Socrates. Plato's interesting, but the realms, the forms, they don't really, that whole thing doesn't really appeal to you. Is that right? Am I accurate at all, or am I close?
Yeah,
feel free to talk about that. So go ahead.
Yeah. So the Socratic method, if I had to choose anything from S&P, Aristotle is great, of course, but S&P particularly, it would be Socrates, his method. It's Plato's forms I'm not a big fan of. Obviously, I'm not an idealist, but both are great. It's hard to choose, but it's like trying to choose your favorite kid, right? Ultimately, you do, but you don't like doing it, and you feel like shit when you do. So, but yeah, the Socratic method is that's where I'd plant my flag if I had to anywhere on that spectrum.
Me too, man. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the ancient philosophers. Socrates is probably like you said, the Socratic method is something that I highly identify with and that wraps around to the tangent of morality and health. I mean, in health, I think education comes along with that, the sciences, and I even think that there's evidence today. We've had some recent studies done in some of the Scandinavian countries about open learning styles and how successful they are at really significantly improving overall scores of the student body. Less structured, less tested at test paralysis is what a lot of people call it, and I really identify with that. I'm not going to go into that now, but so yeah, that ties into health and morality about what are the best things we could possibly do to help our society attain more, which I think would in general have effects in achieving better moral, healthy systems for our society.
Absolutely. And I would love to hear at some point, doesn't have to be now on the show, but what you mean by test paralysis. Is that what you called it?
Yeah.
So, I mean, trying to fit 30 kids who have wildly different psychologies into some Procrustean mold of a test seems unwise in many aspects. And yeah, I am certainly under the belief that the Socratic method does conduce to health and morality, versus something like just vibes-based agreement of the people who seem to be on your side, independent of any reasoning that you may give. It's always an issue when they don't give a reason. And right, so that's I would say definitely in the Socratic culture, Socratic, you know what I mean?
Yeah, philosophy,
style.
Mentality, style. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey, I wanted to say hey to El Rito. Do you have anything you'd like to add? We're just bouncing back and forth off of some topics that were kind of tangential to morality and health and what they mean to us and everything. So if you've followed along at all or have a question, feel free to speak up.
Well, um, so Socrates and I may differ in terms of what we differ because he considers well-being and truth to be the same thing. Again, you never really know if this is Plato talking or if it's Socrates, but knowledge is virtue. So the question, would you rather choose the good fiction or the bad truth? To Socrates, he'd scratch his head, he'd make me define all these things, and what he would thus prove to me is that knowledge and virtue, good and truth, are the same thing. Um, so there's a lot of things, by the way, that I would disagree with Plato and all those guys
Me
about.
too. Yeah.
Much of the reason why I like philosophers is because I disagree with them,
Yeah.
by the
Yeah.
way, not
Well,
just because but
yeah, I agree. They were living in different times and they had different pressures and different collective
right.
understandings than we do now. I often, like, one of the favorite things that someone said to me recently that I loved was, or that I heard was something called philosophical archaeology. When someone in a debate or a conversation about what to, whatever it is today, currently, whatever the topics are going on, and we whip out like Wittgenstein or Plato or Socrates or Aristotle, and then we somehow use this as a basis for truth. And I'm like, okay, but
Right.
who's advancing those topics now today? We can use those as reference of how we got here, but like, what's the emergence today that justifies these? That's where I tend to kind of live. Is I love, like, if I could have all the knowledge, I would, but I have a very limited capacity for mass knowledge. For many reasons. Um, Anyways, yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, go ahead.
So you're only as good as your presuppositions. So given the things that Plato knew at his time, which was the pre-Socratics, he was. You can really see a lot of overlap between him and Parmenides. Similarly, you can see a lot of overlap between Heraclitus or Heraclitus and Aristotle.
Yeah.
That's a kind of a interesting meta kind of thing. But you're only as good as the assumptions and the axioms that you're given prior to it. So of course they're going to make mistakes. But as you said, what would be more of a mistake is to take that mistaken philosophy of theirs and use it today in the 21st century as a basis of truth when we have 21st century STEM, which it doesn't, like, the second place doesn't even come close. It's clearly the best heuristic we have. It's the reason that we're able to talk to each other right now from hundreds, if not thousands of miles away. The reason I'm able to drive a car, the reason I'm able to hit this dab pen, the reason I was able to learn philosophy, pandemic, where I was otherwise isolated. If that ever happened in ancient times or medieval times, and assuming they knew to isolate themselves, what would I know? I would know Grammy's philosophy that she learned from her Grammy way back when
Yeah.
about Jesus and spirits and mediums and all, astrology. So I'm very grateful. It would just be, I mean, this would be a too quo fallacy for me to say this, but it would just be disingenuous almost for me not to use science when it has given me so much utility and fruit and knowledge. But I digest on that.
Yeah. So absolutely revolutionary thinkers of their times, probably. probably
Sure.
inculcated some further thought and were part of what we know today. But yeah, I think what we know today is probably
True.
most important. But then we see this at a different degree too, right? Like I've just witnessed this recently. Like people pop into a room and they're like, "Hey, did you hear what this guy said?" Well, and then the notion is like now that this guy said something that's predictive or right, now everything this person says is right or true. Um, so it's interesting that that's a phenomenon that can go on with historical figures and contemporary figures. It's like humans have this need for some form of leadership or um, direction, guidance to some degree. Does any of that resonate?
So, yes, absolutely. I noticed the same thing. I don't know if it was Ink again who I was talking to about this. I do think actually Casey was in the room because yeah, she was in the room with Ink, I believe. And we were talking about kids needing role models, which I'm not totally against, but I think that the phenomenon that you're describing can happen where now that they have this role model, they think that they're a prophet and that everything that they say is true. Um, and so what I proposed is we don't have role models, but we have role model ideas. We use ideas in some way. Of course, there will have to be a teacher who will likely be teaching because of his charisma, maybe, and to be a mouthpiece for the ideas. But we should focus on the idea more so than the person saying the idea, more than anything. That along with being able to disagree with your role model. If you can disagree with your role model, then the issue probably doesn't apply to you. But you and I are talking about this phenomenon that we've both independently seem to have noticed, where people kind of take charismatic shaman type people as absolute, and it's clearly a fallacy.
Yeah, it lends itself to a lot of other phenomena too that cross boundaries, like politics, for instance. I always talk about like the extremes and then the squishy middle, the big, massive squishy middle or malleable
Yeah.
middle of people. And I think it does seem kind of natural to us to have almost an order of I need a leader or I am a leader. And most people seem to like I need a leader, and other people are like I'm a leader, and give me all the power. um, so yeah, there's notions of that kind of resonate across society, I think.
It's it's easier to obey than it is to command,
Yeah,
I think.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, but yeah, especially in politics, you'll have the sycophants on the radical side, and then you'll just have the people who don't have any standards of knowledge that they can talk about in the squishy middle. And so they're likely, again, due to lack of epistemology, they're bound to a vibes-based, charismatic speaker
Mm,
uh, that sounds right, but we don't know if he is right because we don't have those standards.
interesting.
But
Well, all right, here I got a proposition for you. Here's one of my ideas. I was just telling
yep,
Don about this again today. I tend to be repetitive, but I have the concept of natural selection. And then,
sure,
that's kind of like an umbrella approach. And then within natural selection, there's like sexual selection and group selection and, all kinds of different forms of selection within kind of natural selection type sciences and studies. Um, I have this notion of logical selection that I've kind of been researching and seeing if the same notion exists anywhere, if it's novel, if there's anything unique to it. But it basically the idea is we have this collection, of collective knowledge and facts that kind of give us our epistemic foundations, if you will, our evidentiary foundations. And of course, facts change on the fringe. We learn stuff, things change about we understand, but most of the collective knowledge continues to grow. And this aligns with something that I heard someone say one time that facts swing left politically. Um, for a lot of obvious reasons, but maybe for some other inobvious reasons. An obvious reason would be that the opposite side of the spectrum seems to be anti-science or anti-fact or anti-evidence. They seem to be more feels. Um, but then also that the sciences and things we're uncovering now, like project a reality on society now today that is generally not accepted by the other side. It changes a lot of tradition. It changes a lot of maybe possibly power in control of certain hands. Um, so along the
So
lines of morality and health, I think we could look at it from this standpoint that there's an evolution towards fact and maybe possibly human rights and basic human rights and equality and equity in some way and such. It's an evolutionary path. You know what I mean? Go.
so a quick question. In terms of logical selection, as you're describing it, um, are you talking about the the genes that are responsible for our logical existence being passed down reproductively, like the genes being passed down, or are
Well,
you
that's
talking more so from like individual's life perspective in terms of when they seek facts, they tend to be more left leaning as that individual in their lifespan.
I think all of that because number one, we know we pass genes down, right? And we even mutate genes on the fly and pass them down to future generations. So I think that's part of it. I don't think that's
Yeah,
the whole of it. I think the other part of it is our social evolution, our biological evolution. Our biology is changing also. That's hard to deny. I mean, just there's notions today that we're becoming less sexually dimorphic of a species. Our cranium size is shrinking. Our face structures are changing around. Like all kinds of things are changing in our evolution that like 1,000 or 2,000, several thousand years from now, we might not recognize humans, and we might become something distinctly
interesting.
different. Um, what do you think
That's
about
that's
maybe that?
interesting. So yeah, I'll ask one question and then I'll give you one counter example that I can think of. Um, my question, or I guess my kind of counter proposition, when I've had conversations similar to this, I've been told by men wiser than me that evolution, for things to kind of take some noticeable effect, take longer than 1,000-ish years. They take more like 10 to 15,000 years on minimum.
Mm.
Whether or not that's true, we would need someone smarter than me and that could be you. Now, whether or not that's true, let me give you a counterexample to our genes being passed down, and it's not too serious of a counterexample, but you ever seen the movie Idiocracy?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes.
So in the beginning of the movie, it shows how the future got to the point where it is, which is a society full of idiots. It shows that the dumb people end up reproducing more than the smart people. The smart people don't end up wanting to have kids, or they get into some rational bickering fight of some sort, or they become infertile for whatever reason. And so the dumb people, the what I would say are depicted as the conservative type, not the left-leaning factual based, are reproducing more and more because they're dumb and they're horny and they just want to fuck and they're passing down their genes, independent of. I mean, I wouldn't say that half of them could name one of the three rules of the laws of logic. So clearly, it wouldn't seem that they have the logical gene. Now, of course, this is a fictional movie, but I wonder what you think of if there is any truth to that hyperbolic movie, of dumb people spreading their genes more than smart people.
I don't know if you heard, but this was big news recently. That movie's been upgraded to documentary status. I don't know if you heard this. Um, I would say there, I would say there are
That's good.
evidences that there are evidences because it does seem that like statistically the impoverished tend to have more children than the more well off.
Yeah.
Um, So there's some truth to that. I don't know where that truth leads because it looks like that's what is killing our potential futures from my perspective. You know, a lot of people who just aren't thinking about long-term consequences and potentially shorter-term impacts than they're prepared to accept. Um,
Yeah.
but you know, if those things don't span a human life, generally, they're not going to see it coming. They're going to keep pushing for what they believe is the best thing to push for today. You know, and then you start to have all kind of, just like you said, building a strong, you know, a good epistemology, and it kind of gives you good moral information. If you don't have any of that, if you're just living day to day like most people are, just trying to survive and put food on the table and have a house over your head, or maybe not, maybe just trying to weather the storm, you just don't have time to think about where knowledge comes from and what its
Right.
basis is, you know. So there's
Yeah.
truth
If
to it.
COVID didn't hit,
Yeah,
if COVID didn't hit, maybe I wouldn't be a philosopher, like I said earlier. So I
yeah.
may be one of those people that you're describing if it weren't for that.
Yeah, but I also caution myself not to fall into the naturalistic fallacy to say because it seems this way or because maybe things have happened this way in the past that it's absolutely ordained to happen that way in the future. So things can change,
Right.
possibilities can change. There's the notion of techno-optimism where we could, you know, do what we've been doing over history, which is still complexly solve all the complex problems we've complexly created, you know. Um, does that make sense?
No, I'm with you. Yeah. Now, naturalistic fallacy is not to be confused, and correct me if I'm wrong. ChatGPT was telling me this, and I don't know if it was ChatGPT being right or wrong, but it said not to be confused with the is ought fallacy,
Right.
which
Yeah.
is so what you described the naturalistic fallacy is just because it's happened in the past doesn't mean that it's ordained to continue to be that way in the future, versus the is ought is saying just because it happened in the past doesn't mean it ought be that we ought strive, like that ought not be a goal that we set for ourselves. Is
Agreed.
that true? Is that correct?
I agree totally. There's a
Yeah.
big
Okay.
distinction between what we know historically, what that informs, and what predictions we can make from that. We have to make some predictions. It's what we do as a species.
True.
Um,
Yeah.
but it's we have to kind of rein in those. It's almost it's funny. I could almost lead into a leading topic here that's also at the forefront of my thought. Don and I were talking about it earlier. I've mentioned it to many other people, but this notion of the superorganism and the evolution of the superorganism, which is kind of collective intelligence, if you will. Um,
Well, I wouldn't mind it. If you don't mind, will you give me 3 minutes so I can go take a pee, and I'll be
yeah,
right back?
I need to do that too, actually. That's a good one.
Cool. Be back in a bit.
All right. Anybody else here? I'll be right back if you want to speak up while I'm gone. If you want to talk, whatever, I'll be right back. Casey, if you want to come up, I think you have the ability if you'd like to, but I'll be back in just a moment. When I cut that in for distribution, I should put the Monty Python intermission stuff there. That'd be great. do, 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 do. We apologize for our last apology of this interruption for this intermission. A monster dab. Woohoo! Take the opportunity to clean out a little of my stuff here too. I'm down to scraps. Rito, what's up, man? Can you talk or nice to have you. Thank you for joining in. I appreciate it. Good to have you here. Feel free to join into the conversation if you can. I still don't hear anything from you, brother. Just FYI. I'm here if you're here, man. Maybe
All right,
not.
I'm back.
Hey. All right. And we're back.
Iced coffee or hot coffee?
For me, either depends on my mood. Usually,
Same.
if it's hot, I like iced coffee. I just like coffee in general, coffee flavored things. There's my buddy Copio Vastava too. Awesome. All the cool people here. So I can give you a quick summation if you want, or we could move on to a different topic if you want. I'm not here to bloviate. I'm here to listen to you and let you have the microphone and talk about stuff and see what kind of wisdom we can impart on people from you and stuff. So.
No, you're the pilot of the ship, and I'm enjoying the view right now. So
interesting.
Take us to the superorganism if you'd like, or wherever.
So not my idea, not my concept, but I think I came up with a novel concept within it. But I listened to a bunch of folks in the science realm and in the ecology realm about, the destruction of our planet and human behaviors and things, and in the technology realm of AI and economics, and there's resonating themes through all that stuff. And one of the guys that I listen to uses this reference to the thing that he calls the superorganism, which is essentially, if you bottle it up, collective intelligence of humanity, looked at from the perspective of a single form of consciousness rather than individual human consciousness. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So I'll try and sum up the premise here of the aging of the superorganism, which is if you compare human evolution cognitively from, say, for instance, Homo sapien 300,000 years ago to where we are now, and you put that on the timeline of a growth of a human individual, and you draw lines like human behavior in general, and you come to this sort of map that says we're still pretty young from a species perspective, from the whole perspective. We're like, in our teen years, because we're still very short-term thinking without understanding of long-term consequences. We're bad at conflict resolution. All these traits of what it seems to be young cognition from an individual developmental, cognitive level perspective. So my notion here is that I think humanity's getting better over time. We're evolving to a more cooperative, collective, civil society. If you look at ancient history and look at the path to now, we've got much more in the realm of human rights, basic rights, and scientific understanding and collective knowledge growth, and all these things that are positive to society that we've gotten. We still have a lot of like old vestiges of things hanging out from more archaic times, or maybe that the divide is there, evidence versus not evidence, because obviously evolutionary, we started off with very little evidence, and now we have a whole lot more evidence because of our tools and our complexity and such. So
right.
this leads into the whole health and morality, because it seems like however you want to bottle up morality, that basic human rights and equality and equity and all these things are basically morality, and they can lead to health. So the big question is, though, are we headed to, are we still the teenagers that are destroying our bedrooms because we're mad at our parents, or we don't have parents, and we're just, gonna extinguish ourselves because we're destroying our planet, essentially? That's kind of the whole gross concept, if you will.
So I'll save the clarifying question for after, because I can still grapple with the concept without this. So, in order to achieve well-being, you have to be. So there's two parts of well-being. One is being, and the other is well. So the radical form of what our adolescent type consciousness, evolutionarily speaking, is leading to, I believe, at least the pessimist, MegaWavy pessimist, cynical side of me says, is that, yeah, we'll probably lead ourselves to some sort of artificial carrying capacity that we've created for ourselves, whether it be the global warming issue, which leads to flooding, or a famine, or a water shortage, whatever. That's the cynical side of me. And then there's the, you brought up things like equity and some other things which, will ultimately be contextual, but almost always will be conducive to well-being. Equity, obviously, only the fringe hypotheticals where my lack of equity would lead to greater well-being, right? Other than those, yeah, we should always kind of go for those kind of those virtues. Now, let me ask a question. When you say, as a species, we are still in the adolescent stage. Oh, I wanted to add this too. We are learning at a very rapid rate right now. At least technology is increasing. And we may be lacking. Anyway, let me go back to my question. Sorry. When you say adolescent kind of consciousness or teenage consciousness, is this from a scientific, biological perspective, such as comparing the average age of a species in the past, whether it be a fish or a bird, like, the species are normally 500,000 years old, and so we're still in the teenage years? Or are you saying more from like a consciousness perspective where we're being like, or rational, right? Because we obviously have faculties that other animals don't. So are you comparing us as a species to other biological species, or just in ourselves, like how where you think we could be as a species given our conscious efforts?
I think I see. I mean, I'm not making any prescriptions or declarations. I'm merely drawing correlations to behavior of human behavior over the span of our existence. You can see how low resolution our understanding of the world around us was when we were ancient species, just emerging from, other earlier Homo, if you will.
Yeah.
Where the
No, I get you.
where the whole scale is drawn is very arbitrary. I wasn't very happy with drawing it at like the Homo, when Homo sapiens arose and all. I thought like that's a place that could be questioned or broken down. You might say that since life began or whatever, and where would that place us? So it's just it's a thought experiment, because where it led me was
Right.
like
Gotcha.
it's like human behaviors that are still exacerbated today are still going on, and they correlate with a young brain, if you will. Horrible conflict resolution. We have a lot of wars and stuff going on around the world.
I see. Yeah.
Short-term decision making. We have oil industries pulling the wool over our eyes about the impacts of the world, or, and any other ecological disaster that's going on at the moment. It's basically the powers that be pulling the wool over most of the malleable middle's eyes to say, hey, look over here. Don't look at the real problem.
So,
Yeah.
and so is this what you would say is the superorganism, where to the point where we are outside of this kind of young brain analogous part of our species, where we're now thinking long term, we're now considering the moral and health endeavors
More so,
of,
yes.
yeah, more so. And so is that what the superorganism would be? Are you saying what that is, taking those long term things into consideration?
Yeah, I mean, look, again, not to fall into the, because it looks this way, this is
Naturally.
the way it's going to be.
Right. Yeah.
But there's an evolutionary path, and it seems to be across many boundaries, like economics. Richard Wolff talks about how we used to be nomadic and then we started being collectivist, and in collectivist we started having despotisms of groups of power and control, and from there we went into feudalist society, and feudalist society rose monarchies and other, independent fiefdoms of management of money, and that's when free markets emerged, and free markets emerged, and capitalism emerged, and from capitalism we noticed the bad stuff of that against the labor market, and that's when socialism emerged, and we're evolving into a new order of economics, which is more widespread social support. So all of these lines kind of align with a decent trajectory of humanity to get to a cooperative, more civil place where we're making more long-term judgments and less infighting. So that's all a good thing. That's the positive swing on it, if you will. That's the way it seems to
Do
me.
you know what the social cycle theory is?
Not particularly. Why don't you talk about it?
It's pretty much what you were just doing when you were giving like how this form of government leads to another.
Yes.
And so there's like 5 of them or whatever, and then it goes back to the first one, right? Like everything turns into democracy, and then it's mob rule, and then a king rises out of the mob or whatever. That is the naturalistic fallacy. I had to speak out that epiphany that I had just then, but.
Yeah, you're right, and it does seem that over history, it's happened thousands of times over, and that's why we have this notion of the golden and the gilded age, right? We can't make absolute declarations that cycle is going to continue. I agree.
Oh yeah, I was going to say that too. Yeah. Great point. The naturalistic fallacy, in my opinion, is only a fallacy if we take like an absolute, like a demand for absolute certainty on it. Because like you were saying earlier, we still need to make predictions from the past. That's not a fallacy to make a prediction, but if you're saying, oh, it's going to be that way for sure, because it's happened in the past, then it becomes fallacious, I think.
That weighs in both directions, though, doesn't it? Right?
You don't want to be too skeptical. You want to be exactly. Yeah. You want to be justified in your beliefs. You want to have a good, sound standard that isn't too radical. I believe that moderation is a virtue. This is a Platonic virtue. Being radical. Being a right-wing radical and being a left-wing radical are both radical.
Yeah. Rito, did you figure your stuff out? Do you want to say anything? In the ending, kids figure it out. Utopia. It's not the ending. I was joking. What's up, man? Can you speak? Hello? Nothing? Nope, nothing. I don't know what's going on there, man. I don't know why anybody else would be able to speak here and you wouldn't. You're not muted.
Right click. I don't know. You go to your Discord settings if you haven't already. Right click your microphone. Make sure that your input volume's up. Make sure you're on the right microphone and not your Xbox controller microphone or your monitor microphone.
The right device, yep. He said he'll join by computer. He's on his phone.
But go ahead and tell me. I feel like there's more to the superorganism, or if not, whatever. But so,
really.
So do you think that and so is this what you think would be ideal, given the certain natural circumstance we find ourselves in, or do you think that this is what will end up being the case?
You know what I think? I think I'm gonna die. And it doesn't matter, but it's fun to talk about.
Before you'll.
I'm gonna keep doing that one because that really comes down to the bottom line for me these days is like how much I'm enjoying the conversation, because otherwise it doesn't seem like it really makes a difference. Anything really makes a difference. We're on an evolutionary path, but evolution also tells us that it's not going to follow a necessary predictive path. So I don't know, man. I'm here passing on the good word with hopes that it can be the good word and have an impact to someone positively, whatever that means. Um, I'll bring up the other thing I was going to talk about before, which is because of my circumstances, I think I have not a unique perspective from other people necessarily, but of course my own unique perspective on it. I'm old and ill, and I don't think I have a lot more many hours or years left on this earth. So
Hours? Holy shit.
yeah, no, I didn't mean hours. I meant years. But I mean that
Jesus.
that could be. I mean, shit can happen at any point. I got a lot of knocks going against me. But the unique perspective is like I just don't. Nothing really matters anymore. So I try not to take a particular stance on anything. I just try to collect the information and understand it as best as possible. So I try not to make
Yeah.
prescriptions or predictions where I don't need to.
Right.
I agree. I love health. I think health is super important, but we're in such complex circumstances as a species that it's hard to dig things down to just health or morality or some
I
combination of
know.
health or morality that's going to possibly have a positive impact to fix any of the things that I think are going on wrong right now. Um, you know,
One of the first words you said early in the conversation, you brought up natural phenomena. There are no such things as moral phenomena. There are only moral interpretations of phenomena.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and you're right. There's only so much we can do. By the way, I'd be honored if I were the last person to have a conversation with you. I'm not. I'm not hoping that you only have hours left, of course.
I'm honored just that
But
you
yeah,
would
no.
come here and spend time with me. So appreciate it.
Heck yeah. I'd be unjustified uh, to not talk with you. It would be unjust of me to do so unless I obviously had other obligations. And I agree that prescribing things unnecessarily, doing anything unnecessarily, I try to avoid, unless it's for the pleasure of doing so and it's not affecting anyone else's autonomy or their well-being. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm going to do a quick check here because it's been an hour. And the hour passed really quickly. I don't know how much time you have. I don't want to take up more of your time than you want to. I want you to know that we're welcome to do this anytime. I'd love to have you on any. This is the purpose of my channel show, is just to have conversations. If we can have guided conversations, cool. If not, if they go random, that's just part of my personality too, and I'm okay with that. I just like talking and I like recording these moments because I've had so many good conversations with people that just go past to history. So it's nice to have a recorded record, if you will.
you have me until 1. So let's talk about whatever you want. I'm free till 1.
All right, cool. Well, Casey just popped up here and Rito keeps trying to join, I think. So, Casey, do you have anything you want to say? No? Is it maybe not what the hell's going
Uh-oh.
on? Is this a Discord issue or
Uh-oh.
something? I mean, I can hear you and my stuff is recording fine. I can hear inputs and
Right.
sounds. So whatever's coming through is being recorded. It seems other people are having trouble speaking.
Is God silencing everyone but us?
Maybe that's not a horrible thing. I don't know.
I
I'm just kidding. Let
I
me
can
look at.
hear.
Oh, and see,
I
Don
can
can
hear
talk. What's
Mega.
up with that?
Yeah, I can hear Mega. I can hear Jeet just fine. I cannot hear El Rito. I cannot hear Casey. It's so weird.
I hear Don. I hear Mega. I don't know. Robin's down in the audience right now. And Robin, we've been having a really great conversation. Not that it won't continue, but things seem to be. We're just trying to figure out voices at the moment. Discriminate against. Yes, particularly you. I'm hiding it. I'm hiding it from you. So we've gone down lots and lots of topics, man. Is there anything you want to wrap back around and talk about through the things that we've wandered through, Meta?
Well, I don't know if Casey can talk or not, but I will address what she tagged me in, which is, yeah, parents are are the first role models. Yeah, that's just more or less descriptively true, and I think that's probably how it should be for the most part. Just to ensure a healthy development of the child. I think that's usually. But there's also in parents. It doesn't have to be biological. I remember we were having a conversation with Jack the other day. He was making the argument that the biological parents are special in some way, and I don't know if that's true or not because of healthy adopted children with healthy parents. I'm sure would disprove that, but the one thing that I may disagree with or may not with Plato and his ideal regime is the philosopher king. The philosopher king and the guardians, the gold and the silver, are not to have any private family. They are to not have any private property, have any cool cars or fancy watches. They only get paid subsistence. This is how we, hedge oligarchy. So I don't, whether or not that's healthy for the children of the philosopher kings and the guardians, I don't know. They would need a good orphanage. They would need a good set of. I'm answering, I guess, Casey specifically, but for everyone here as well. So that I do agree with not having maybe private property or just getting paid subsistence when you're high up on the rankings. We're not getting political here, which we don't have to, but I think I agree with that sentiment of his in order to hedge things like oligarchies and like unfair economical and financial circumstances. But yeah, parents are the first role models. That's definitely true.
Mm-hmm.
Ideas, though, are still most important in my opinion. The ideas that come from those vessels, not the vessel itself, but yeah.
I tend to use the word stewards or guardians more than I do parents because, just because, then that sets in a sort of an imbalance between people who are born and don't have natural parents, or, these are just important people in your life that guide you in through important evolutions of understanding, knowledge. I wholly agree with that. Those are kind of the most important people. It takes a village in a sense. And as far as some biological connection, the more I think, the more I get sort of leisure time and ability to think about that. I'm not wedded to biology being anything special like genetics or, there are special notions there, right? Like it's obvious that females, when they go through pregnancy, their olfactory system changes so they can then recognize the scent of their babies, and there's pheromones and things that go around, and there's natural inclinations. But to say that it's better to be raised by a parent than some surrogate because your parent died for some, maybe in childbirth or some other thing, I think there's a bit of fallacy there, right?
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. I'm sure it's easy to falsify too. Whatever. I don't know how you'd put it in a study, but I'm sure you could falsify it just finding the adopted kid who turned out healthy or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I won't get into psychopathy or anything, but
yeah.
But yeah. Here, Casey wants to try again. Maybe I have low hopes that the microphone will work this time. It seems like Robin, it didn't work either, but
I don't know about y'all, but I'm getting a Discord update like every other freaking day, and shit just keeps changing. So I'm blaming Discord at this point. Because Don seems to be able to speak. Don, did you have anything else you wanted to say?
Not really. You guys are a lot more studied on these subjects than I am. I'm just having a good time listening. When you dip into the political side now, that's where I can come in.
I'm willing to go there if we want to. Obviously, with the topic of morality and health, that's hugely political almost immediately. I don't know what's not political. Is there anything that can't be politicized? Please, if there's anything, someone tell me what it is.
I
sure can't think of it.
Leprechauns.
Sure, you're not getting me Lucky Charms.
You'll need to pay a tax to get me Lucky Charms. There you go. It's political.
Yeah, yeah.
um,
I think leprechauns have been oppressed and deserve the Lucky Charms.
mm.
Well, so Don, what do you think about assuming that Plato's regime, which heavily resembles a Marxist regime, what would you say about kind of the higher ups getting paid only subsistent, getting paid, $35,000, $40,000 a year only?
As in, like company owners or politicians or.
Yeah, so we'll say like CEOs and company owners, as well as
Mhm.
policemen, who that's who the guardians truly represent, are the policemen, the people who enforce the rules.
Uh,
And I guess the POTUS would be the philosopher king, which I almost gag saying that because of our current POTUS. But so yeah, what would you say about Trump and CEOs and other higher ups that seem to be in an oligarchic position being paid only subsistent wages?
well, I do think that that the pay structure, the compensation structure in this country is quite upside down. It does seem to be the people working the hardest that are making the least. But the people who um, live in very nice accommodations and fly around the world to do business seem to be doing very well. Um, I don't
Yeah,
I don't see the fairness in that. You can say, well, they built the company, but that's not always the case. A lot of times the companies are inherited or taken over just because you're rich. So, um, in a merit-based system, it would seem that the worker would make the most, and the CEO would be the least. Of course, that would mean nobody would want that job. Um, so
true.
maybe a better way to look at it is everybody made enough, and we don't have that system.
Yeah, so in Plato's regime, it would be, as you were saying, how this is upside down. The workers are not getting the majority of what they work for. The bronze, who are the laborers, would be receiving the majority of all of that income. And so now what you're saying is, okay, maybe that's good, but what would be more ideal is if the bronze, silver, and the gold, everyone just got paid enough to satisfy their, you know, or their at least basic needs, we can say, and then, well, I
And
won't throw too, yeah, yeah, go
maybe a
ahead.
few wants and extravagances. Everybody should treat themselves from time to time.
And then there's the thriving, right? Yeah, so, but don't excessively thrive. Like it goes back to our point of unnecessarily doing things. I mean, do you need 4 Lambos? Do you need a
Indeed,
Lambo? Right?
indeed.
So, yeah.
I like to fish, but that doesn't mean I need a $4 million boat to do it. I can fish out of a $300 boat I got off of the Facebook Marketplace.
Don's on his yacht fishing.
Yeah.
Mm, mm.
No, yeah, I agree. Now the pragmatics of it, I don't know. I'm as I know as much about quantum mechanics as I do about the practical. Well, I actually know more about quantum mechanics than I do about politics. But anyway,
I,
but
I don't
oh,
know
and
if
then
there's much more to know about politics besides I feel this way and they feel this way, or this group feels this way and that group feels this way. I really don't know if there's much more to understand about it. So, besides all
I
the
think
complex interdynamics, then, but yeah.
you're right. You know,
so
I
yeah, go
see
ahead.
a shift, maybe even starting with my generation or the one just before it. Uh, it seems like in my father's time and his father's time that science was revered and promoted, well accepted, And then somewhere around my Generation X, or sometime just before, the sentiment seemed to have switched. And I'm noticing a lot of people who graduate maybe high school, maybe they graduate even with an associate's, and they stop learning because it's no longer required. And the thing about science is it's always trying to prove itself wrong, which is what makes it right. Um, and people quit accepting the new information. And I wonder, is that cultural, social, educational, or a really big mix of all three, or is there something else I'm not thinking about?
Yeah, I even see scientists do this, where there will be new scientific information, but it doesn't align with the science that they know, and so there becomes a little bit of cognitive dissonance there. It most likely, again, I'm not as politically understood, well, understanding as you guys, but it's probably a conglomeration of those three things that you said, as well as emotion. I mean, seems as though we're more or less in agreement that there's a vibes-based mechanism going on here. So, if your vibe's in line with whatever stance there is, or your purposes at least, then you're definitely going to be more motivated to believe X, even if it's not truthful. And yeah, I totally agree that being able to prove something wrong, i.e., falsifiability, is one of the key tenets to determining truth. I mean, if it's not falsifiable, then I can say anything that's unfalsifiable, and you can just call it true. So that's an issue.
Was that I'm sorry, I lost track there. I was trying to help Casey, and I'm trying to figure out how to get some volume and speak here. Was that a response to Don,
Well,
or?
yeah, it was.
Yeah, yeah.
And so Casey also said that, I guess I only read the first part. There's some theories that kids see their parents as God in a way during their earliest years. I think that might be one of the reasons religion remains so pervasive. Yeah, when you grow, this is like kind of Freudian in a way, even when you grow up from your father role model, you want now a sky daddy, a sky father. So again, Freud's epistemology maybe wasn't the best. Let me read the rest so she doesn't crash out. Like, kids might start realizing their parents aren't right about everything, but religion is so baked in the culture that it's hard to challenge all of the ideas there. Yeah, you got to. It's tough, especially as a kid, when you're so impressionable, and so you hear things that, of course, as a kid you don't have an epistemology really, and you're like, okay, God said so, i.e., Dad said so. I mean, I still suffer from that. I'm able to critique my dad nowadays, but I'll still say a lot of things that my dad said that perhaps aren't truthful, or they seem like funny, therefore it seems true, but it's just ironic, but it's not actually true. So yeah, that definitely could be a reason why religion is so pervasive. People, impressionable or not, need those ideas baked into them. You need ideas baked into you as a kid. This is why I think we should start teaching logic in third grade, as well as morals, but that gets political. So, but yeah, teach logic in third grade. Make the impressionable apes understand reasoning at some bare minimum level, and hopefully all the religion nonsense and the other nonsense will work its way without kids having such an ingrained kind of indoctrinated set of ideas.
Mm, mm. Did you have a response, Don?
No, I agree. It's a sad state of affairs when a large section of the population decides to quit accepting new information or even looking into it.
And I think part of what we just, we just passed was that a lot of the population didn't really have a choice. They were indoctrinated into it, the lack of critical thought is something that is passed generationally to any degree, I think. Um,
Yep.
and look, we have this notion that we can track we do track sort of statistically, which is magical thinking. Kids tend to have magical thinking. The more or the less experiences you have, people tend to towards magical jumping of conclusions to build their morality and epistemology, even though they don't even know what those things really are.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah, and parents perpetuate it with the myths of Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny,
yeah,
so on and so forth. And speaking as a parent, we do it innocently. But you're right, it builds in a problem that some people never do solve later.
mm, mm,
Um, Honestly, my public education and my religious education didn't allow for critical thought. It was memorization and uh, repeat. And does are we gonna do well on the minimum performance tests? All right, yeah, okay. Then they know enough, pass them on.
mhm.
I didn't even know the word epistemology existed till I was 48 years old, man.
Yeah.
Yep.
Took me a long time to
And
grasp
so,
those things too. Yeah.
indeed, I mean, I had the idea of how do you know what you know or
Right.
evidentiary reasoning, but I didn't realize there was even a term for it. And I'd only heard of philosophy as something that you do in college.
And you pass the doobie around and you talk about like far out stuff.
Yeah, like what's the meaning of string?
Yeah,
Yeah.
man.
Well, so to that point that Don just said, we can go back to my my question that I ask people when, would you rather choose the good fiction or the bad truth? Now, that's a hypothetical. In reality, when we try to actually apply that, what we find is that things like critical thinking and truth seeking leads to good circumstances, leads to the good life, leads to, that which we prefer. Um, this is the common, which I understand, it's the common counter that I receive from people when they don't really want to answer the question. They say, oh, well, both of the things are part of each other. And it's like, yeah, I agree, but, I'm just trying to figure out the value set here. But and since well-being is higher up on my purposes, that's why I'm using truth seeking, because I know that it's very good in conducing to well-being. Truth seeking is so. But anyway, the myths are good too. There are myths. I mean, I'm not gonna throw out the baby with the bathwater, but those are far and few between compared to evidence and other standards of knowledge that lead to well-being.
Yeah,
Agreed.
I think there's a significant enough distinction between fiction and nonfiction that we can draw that they don't have to cross each other's boundaries strongly.
Right.
you know.
Right.
Um, okay. So, anyways, anybody else? Anything? Bueller? Bueller? Is Rito? Did Rito figure it out? I see him trying to unmute.
Yeah,
Robin's up
God is
here.
playing a sick joke. I think Robin's suffering from the same thing.
Possibly. I think it's a Discord thing. If I had to guess, Discord is fucked up for some reason.
Yeah.
Well,
Um,
Maybe there was an update midway of our conversation, and so everyone after
well,
the
you know that
update
that's
can't
those are
join or
another
can't
that
call.
that's part of that magical thinking that I'm talking about. This is a scale, right? It's like so many complex things go on behind the scenes to make what
Yeah.
we're doing here possible that and we tend to focus
Yeah.
on the ones that are right on in front of us rather than could be the zillion other things that the selective attention thing, if you will. This is a psychological phenomenon I hound on a lot for people. I'll throw out a hypothetical. My favorite hypothetical here is, all right, you're sitting at a table with your family and you're all eating. You got plenty of food to go around and more than you need. And surrounding you are all the starving people of the world just spanning out from you. You're not allowed to feed them, but you can go ahead and continue to eat and enjoy yourselves and whatever. So then I would ask the question, would you want to feed the people surrounding you? And probably I think most people would say yes. I'll leave it up to you what your answer would be there or anybody else's. But I think most people would probably say, yeah, I'd want to feed them. And I'm like, so why is it different that they're 3,000 miles away or 5,000 miles away or 10,000 miles away? They're still starving. There's no difference there. And we can change that. We have the ability, but we just don't. Um,
It's easy to forget about when you're not looking at it.
yes, yes. Selective attention, nearsightedness, all these things I
Right.
attribute. And, we do this not only at the individual level, but malignantly, collectively at the collective superorganism level, you know. So there's resonations
And
there.
weird tangent, but still related. Whenever I'm giving something to a homeless person, it's almost never money. I mean, sometimes I will if there's cash on it and he's like haggling me for it. But usually, if I'm going into a store and there's a guy there and he says, "Hey man, you got any fridge?" I'm like, I don't have any cash. I mean, I have my card. Can I like buy you like a drink, like water, or food, or something? And he's like, nah, man, I need money for a black and mild and some liquor. And I'm like, oh shit. So sorry, man. Are you sure you don't want it? Whatever. But the point that I wanted to bring it to is maybe this UBI kind of thing that I'm getting from people like Don, who I also agree with that there should be this basic set of means. Now I'm throwing this out there. I've only said it to a few people. I haven't gotten much backlash from it. But what if we just provide the goods rather than the money itself? Like, let's say we do have basic income, give everyone $1,000 or whatever a month, but inflation increases and now water costs 5 times more than it did. That doesn't really solve anything. That just kicks the can down the road. So
Mm.
what do you think if we were to, and I think we do this with food stamps maybe, but we give just the goods to the person rather than the money
Mm.
in their
Mm.
bank account?
Go ahead, Don, if you want to. Go ahead, man.
And yeah, I don't mean
Otherwise,
to like tangent too much. I mean, we can.
no, it's an
Well,
interesting
I'd like
topic.
to go back to like, yeah,
Yeah, it's an
yeah.
interesting topic. It's an expansive one for me. So, if anybody else wants to jump in before I blow the eight.
well, yeah, we do have restrictions on SNAP benefits. Like they're in some places, they're allowed to use them for hot food, like fast food restaurants. So, in most places, that's prohibited. So, like even grocery store deli chicken, if it's hot, you generally, in Michigan, Arkansas, and a few other places that I'm aware of, you cannot buy it, period, with food stamps. Um, then, but I like the idea of communal gardening to provide fruits and vegetables, and maybe an entire community goes in on the herd of live animals that would be needed, and they all raise them. They volunteer their effort, and in return get an equal share. Nobody comes off with Well, I'm going to take the porterhouse. You get the loins, and everybody else is going to take shoulders and whatever else we got. You know, it would need to be equally divided as long as the effort is all equal. Um, Indeed, we would need to make deferences for disabled and elderly, those who otherwise cannot. But in a society where your basic needs are provided for, your clothing, your food, your shelter, you could work more towards a community that sustains itself, at least in some large degree. Whereas in the consumer society we live in today, I think that's just prohibited by the amount of time we have to spend earning money. And we got to make sure Robin gets the Boston butt.
The Boston button, yes, the butt. Did you have anything to respond there with, Wavy? Wavy's going to have to go in about 20 minutes, I think he said.
Gotcha.
Nope. Yeah, I'd want to like know more about the.
Oh, we're losing Wavy.
Oh, we are.
No, no, I'm here. It's my phone switches to and from the car's Bluetooth when it so pleases, even if I'm in
Okay.
the car.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I'd want to know more about like the SNAP benefits so I can maybe have a practical understanding of it. I mean, who knows how practical UBI is in general, but I mean, it seems like we're implementing these kind of things with food stamps, and I assume that's what the SNAP benefits are. Those are the same things, right, as food stamps?
Yes. Yes, they are.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
EBT,
Supplemental
yeah.
Nutrition Assistance Program.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm.
no, but I mean, it's, yeah,
No, go ahead,
I don't
man.
know why I don't know why I bring up politics. It's like masochism for me doing that. So, but I mean, if you guys have anything to bring up, or if you want to go back to what was it about select? Oh yeah, your hypothetical with the people who can feed X amount of people because they have an exorbitant amount of food, but they don't do it because they're 3,000 miles away. Yeah, and that's certainly an interesting psychological. It's I can go all philosophical on it and say that you're not abiding to your morals when you do that. When you only do something because of some external factor or you don't do it for whatever reason, like you have a double standard, you're acting heteronomously, is what it's called, where you're not acting universally in all situations, no matter what.
Right.
Obviously, I believe morals are heavily contextualized. So finding universals is very difficult. Other than seeking well-being, I don't know of a good universal that can be applied to all situations and all times.
Mm-hmm.
But there are definitely examples where being heteronomous is bad. Well, you know, you don't want anyone to pickpocket you, but you see a $20 bill hanging out of this old lady's jacket and you want to take it, right? But you'd never want someone to pickpocket you. So you know, there are plenty of ways. Murder, right? No one wants to be murdered, but all murderers want to murder and not get murdered. So
Right, or yeah,
but,
or just following statistics and saying, "Oh, you're just part of the group of casualties in which we can calculate." That's yeah, that could kind of give a cold, non-responsive, unless it reaches some magnitude where it's now really offending to society. We're just letting people go as part of the casualties. I would think those things we'd want to fight against to minimize. Does that make sense?
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Again, it goes back to evidence and wanting to have a good epistemic standard. Um, do you apply that standard in all cases, or do you have a special occasion where you don't apply that so you can satisfy whatever ulterior motive that you have?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I
Well,
see Mario.
Yeah, I'm
Oh, yeah,
trying to get
what?
other people up here, but it's apparently there's a lot of technical difficulties. I'm happy that at least the couple of us can interact, so at least there's some success here. Everybody else seems to be possibly having an intermingling of challenges, and I apologize for that if it's anything to do with me. Um, so yeah, all right. So we're at about the 15-minute mark. Are you doing all right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, so I mean, there's a lot of different directions we could go from what we were just talking about. My brain wanders. I wanted to go back to like maybe a couple of times I thought of the superorganism again because it's not just one notion. It's not just the notion that we have this collective intelligence but it's also the notions of like if you've ever heard of the polycrisis or the metacrisis or um, and a lot of these notions come down into something like that I follow today, which would be like complexity economics, which is something our general economic systems fail at, is taking into account the human and future cost of doing business today, if you will.
Right.
Um, so um, yeah, that's where I am with my health and morality is like we need to continue the evolution. Maybe we can speed up that evolution with technology. I don't know. Um,
Well, I do think that uh, having health and or morality as a goal would certainly conduce to this superorganism, a species who intersubjectively wants the best for each other, which includes long-term planning, complex, economic structures, and all of that kind of stuff. Uh, so, I mean, it sounds more or less like I'm in agreement with you on that. Whether or not that's practical, or whether we go into the idiocratic society instead, who knows?
the documentary, you mean?
Um,
Yeah, yeah.
the documentary, right? Yeah.
Yeah, some might say we're already there.
Yep.
We're just all right. So we got 15 minutes or so, 10, 14 minutes. Where are you with AI and technology and all that? What's your stances on those things?
It's it's one of the it's a great tool that we have. Um, I do see people maybe using it in a way that wouldn't be conducive to knowledge gathering, where they're kind of relying on it in a way. Um, so, but I I don't see I don't know much about the potential issues. I've been I've been given some ideas where an AI chooses to, if given a purpose, will achieve that purpose by any means, even if it means harming the subjects in that. Now, I don't know much about that study. I was only told about it through word of mouth, but that could be an issue. I really don't know too much about the issues of it, but I don't know what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think what I'm hearing from you is that AI can have both positive and negative outcomes, impacts, right? It just depends on how we use it, how we apply it, and like anything today, humans tend to have uh, usages that fall outside the bounds of what we might consider best for humanity, or different goals, different targets, if you will. Is that fair enough, or? Oh, you're muted, just in case you don't know that.
Sorry, give me a sec. Give
Yeah,
me a
no
sec.
worries, no worries. If you get, yeah. As far as I'm concerned about the topic, AI and everything, huh, like anything, it's complicated with me. With every technological advancement across history, there's always been sort of the reactionary responses to it that are like, no, it's terrible. We can't go into the future this way. It's unequal. It's this. And then but we're going to gain these things. And then we're going to swing the gains into like, now I can turn this into profit and see how I can benefit from it and sell it. And, all those reverberations that come across with technological advancements, and I agree it can be used in good and bad ways. Our evolution as far as a species is concerned, I think we're often just being swayed to look at things that don't matter as much rather than focusing on the logical things that do. One of those, like, here's a good proposition. One of those notions is something that you call ubiquitous surveillance, right? And it is exactly as it sounds. It's the fact that AI, with its complex calculability, capabilities as compared to humans and earlier algorithms and such, is and will be so advanced that it can do things like calculate the distortion of sound waves in a radio waves in a building and tell exactly who and where and what is in that building and what position they are without having to have sight in the building. You just collect the bouncing radio waves and calculate it complexly, and now you've got this full view of a place. And we have radio waves pop, all over the place as we are. You'd have to be in a pretty remote place if you don't have something bound. And if not, it just comes in, creates its own radio waves. And, we have weapons that can shoot around corners now because we can target things through things that are not in line of sight. We carry devices around with us. It's like I was telling Don earlier, I've got headphones on most of the time and I'm carrying this device in my pocket. People have watches on that are collecting their information. And is that a good thing or a bad thing? With AI, we're going to be able to calculate a lot, but on the other end of it, who's doing the judging on human behavior and activities,
So the the spoon didn't make me fat. So as you were saying, these
Yes.
things could be done good or badly. Even the whole surveillance thing that you were saying, that sounds like an outstanding tool. That sounds like if I saw it in a movie 10 years ago, I'd think it was sci-fi, right? And so, but that can also be used poorly. Bank robbers use it or whatever to steal from a bank, boom. But do we blame the spoon? Do we blame AI? Or do we blame the guy who doesn't know how to control his appetite and his yearning for money? Well, I don't know. So, yeah, health, morality, philosophy, these are all prerequisites, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would say we blame all those things. But, then again, in my place in life, I try not to blame. I'd rather understand the past and what led us here. And I try not to play the blame game anymore. I've just something I fell out of. It's something, my interest in science and some of my favorite science communicators like Robert Sapolsky have led me to a place where blame and shame and acclaim and all those things just don't make sense to me anymore.
And if I were good enough at predicting history and being a natural fallacists, I would have predicted that we might talk about like free will or these kinds of things and whatnot.
Yeah, of course.
And
that's
so,
what it leads.
and so I agree that the blame and the shame and whatnot doesn't make sense if we take the perspective that free will, doesn't exist as an illusion, whatever the case may be. Even if we take it seems like we're able to make choices and decisions and have, even then, I wouldn't want to blame or shame or guilt. I still think things like rehabilitative alternatives would be better in that case also. But yeah, no, it especially doesn't make sense if you have the type of information that Sapolsky does, who has all of these studies to reference that show us that, yeah, these things are biologically determined. I'm not going to LARP as Sapolsky because that would be a disservice to him. But yeah, no, he obviously knows what he's talking about, and he has the facts to back it up. And his prescriptive notion that we shouldn't blame or shame, or what was it you said, acclaim?
Acclaim, yeah, the other side of those things, that there should be a
Okay.
reason why
Yeah.
we should hold other people above other people because of their accomplishments,
Right.
You know
True.
what I mean?
Gotcha. That makes sense. Yeah.
Um,
Yep. So no,
Well, I could just say,
I
to piss
yeah,
off Mario, I could just say, we just solved the free will problem, so you were wrong. It's determinism all the way. Ha 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 ha. I'm just kidding.
no, yeah,
I'm
I am.
joking.
God, it really sucks that you're silencing these folks because. But no, I agree. I mean, it only takes one to tango, or what is it? It only takes two to tango. So
Two to tango.
the
Yeah.
conversation's been good as far as I can.
I've enjoyed it very much, and yeah, I guess we're wrapping it up. So I'm just going to go ahead and kill the recording and say goodbye, sayonara. If you want to say anything before we leave.
Salud, which means cheers, but it also means health in Spanish. So health to everyone.
Awesome. Salud. Thank you, Wavy. Appreciate it, man. And Don and everybody else who
Yep.
tried to interact today. We can still hang out afterwards, but I'm just going to shut off the recording at this point.